Hello, and welcome to episode 17 of Fatter Future.
Yep.
This is the Windows 11 edition because...
One more episode, you can vote. 18.
Yes. Oh, that too.
Yeah, I'm just kidding.
It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be, and actually Windows is going to come out with version 12, so then it's going to be episode 18's version 12, and we're just going to keep going on forever, so...
Okay, what number are we on now?
I don't know. Where are we? 17? Episode 17.
That is the number to remember today, 17. No, actually, today's number is going to be 11 because we have 3 topics on our special edition of Windows 11 Fatter Future.
So it's there's just so much to unpack, really. I didn't think we could do it justice in one Fatter Future topic.
Well, we're going to just pick out the 3 highlights that we want to cover with, kind of talking about Fatter Future. So in line with our theme, 3 things that Microsoft is suggesting with Windows 11.
Well, and I think that's really important because Microsoft has done a lot of shift in Windows 11 where on the top face, it's just visual change, right? Pretty shiny new operating system. And that's great to be excited about and everything, but there's a lot of undercurrent shift that we can see. Is that something that Microsoft is really seeing as a permanent shift in the way that they handle Windows? Or is it something that's just temporary? And so we kind of thought these fit in perfectly.
Yeah, so our first topic is going to be about this kind of forcing of operating system upgrades from Microsoft. We'll touch on that. From there, we're going to talk about the the OS upgrades and hardware security. And then last but not least, we're going to touch on that user interface experience.
User interface?
Yeah, so why don't you kick us off with number 1, Justin?
Oh, so this is actually really interesting. Some of the news, as you may know, so on June 24th, they actually announced Windows 11, and pretty much the following week, they allowed for the development insider build so that you could, without having to go through any, questionable gray channels or anything, you could, if you wanted to, install and assess Windows 11. So it's really great to kind of be able to see some of these changes that were being made and being able to look at them for yourself. And so a lot of people have been doing that, and we've started to see some of the undercurrents or some of the under features of Windows 11. And one of the things that's been coming out is that the upgrade itself to Windows 11 is going to be just like a feature pack, apparently. It's going to be accessible through the Windows update to Windows 10, and you press a button, maybe you don't intend to press a button, and your computer is upgrading to Windows 11.
Just a reboot and you're on Windows 11.
Yeah, before you know it. And it's very interesting. This kind of, they're fitting it in as a feature pack. This is not a major OS upgrade. This isn't get the CD out and do an install. It's just, if you just don't think about it, you click the install and you're up on the latest version.
Well, and keep in mind, especially not so much on the business side, but for home users, feature packs can be installed automatically. At a certain point, Microsoft can set that flag to just make it happen. And that's really kind of what we're getting at in our Fatter Future. We saw with Windows 7 to Windows 10, there was this period of time where you could choose to do it for free. It was not an automatic upgrade. It was something you had to go to a website, you had to do some steps to do. But that is not going to be the same with Windows 10 to 11. So that's really the question mark. Are we seeing something new here where you can't stay on the older operating system?
And that's going to be the question, is how hard Microsoft toes that line, right? Because they've had some successes and some kerfluffles, if you will, in the past. I mean, we used to roll our eyes at the perpetual updates, reminders, notifications on Windows 7 for Windows 10. It was, while it was annoying, though, it wasn't actually something that was initiated or could be initiated on its own volition. Well, we've seen feature packs roll out, and no one was the wiser.
Well, and the bigger message is that, if Windows 11 is a feature pack for Windows 10, then after Windows 11 becomes that feature pack, it's reasonable to expect there'll never be another feature pack for Windows 10.
Right. Yeah, where does that lay? Is it officially a legacy operating system? Does it only get critical security updates? Does it get regular updates? Does it even get another feature pack, like what you're saying?
Right.
Or is that no longer the case?
Well, we know that if you're not on the latest feature pack today, you still receive critical updates and support updates from Microsoft. So I would expect they're going to continue to patch issues with the operating system. But you're not going to get any more major upgrades, any feature improvements with Windows 10 until you go ahead and make that leap and jump to 11.
Okay. So it's very possible 21H1 is the last version of Windows 10. That, and I think they actually did an end of life. Officially, they've put it on the announcement for Windows 10 in 2025. So it might just be that's what you got. You'll get token upgrades, quality of life, security, things like that, but nothing major until then.
So fad or future, is this Microsoft's way of forcing everybody to stay current and not, we still have Windows 7 people out there in some cases, specialized situations, of course, but is this their way of saying, hey, we're not going to have any Windows 10 out here after a certain amount of time?
Well, this is what's really interesting about this is that from a consumer perspective, it makes sense. They're really more acquiescing to the world at large and the other operating systems out there. Apple, iOS, Mac OS, Android, Chrome, all of these operating systems do just, okay, the next time the next major version's available, you have a button, you press it, you install, upgrade, it's just rolling on to the next version. But businesses, enterprises aren't designed like that. They're more these life cycles of the operating system for compatibility, their line of business and everything.
Right.
So while I think that this is the future, I think it's also going to be a bigger shift for businesses and enterprises than Microsoft is kind of making it out to be from a consumer standpoint.
I agree with you. I think it is also the future, and this is Microsoft probably following suit with what the other people do, but Microsoft is not the same as everybody else, and how their operating system is used has been one of the reasons for their success. So this could be a defining moment in Microsoft's history as they force people to 11. If that becomes the situation come 2022, it could really change the position they have in the marketplace.
And how transparent too, right? Because it took them a long while for some of these frequent updating reminders for the Windows 7 situation, for them to put effectively a kill switch for domains or administered networks to say, I don't want this to be presented to my users.
Right.
And so maybe if they come out and they say, here's Windows 11, here's equally a kill switch for domains and enterprises that you can just say, I'm not upgrading to Windows 11 right now, then that's a different conversation, right? That's towing that middle of the line. So.
Well, you said something that leads into our second topic. You talked about iOS and Android and those kind of upgrades, but actually those upgrades don't happen if you don't have compatible hardware. So you cannot get the latest version of Android if you're on an older phone. It doesn't support the new version, and they're good about that. We've kind of seen a little bit of change. It's not just hardware requirements, but tell us, what is it about the requirements of Windows 11 to make it a little different than previous versions?
So, yeah, this is definitely going to be an interesting topic of conversation between here and October, no doubt. But it's because of the security in the components for the hardware. And so it took a while. Microsoft did not do the best job transparently presenting these information when they announced Windows 11. They had a little app that was a compatibility checker, but it was a little bit opaque and not really detailed. But it's kind of broken up that some of their more stringent requirements, especially in the CPUs, the fact that as of right now, they're not going to officially support any generation earlier than Intel 8th generation processors. And they're also requiring TPM chips. TPM, which is
trusted platform.
Exactly. And so these two things, while they're relatively standard recently, let's say the last 3-4 years, there's a lot of computers out there that don't have a TPM chip, that aren't on an 8th gen or later chip. And so that security need is valid. Microsoft has always just been the most compatible, most backwards compatible. And this is their first really major push for drawing a line in the sand of saying where the security needs to be met to kind of keep up, almost if you will, with some of these others.
Right.
And that's really just an interesting shift, because traditionally Windows has always been, if you have the specs, it'll run.
Right.
Where there's almost hobbyists that'll be like, how old can we run a new operating system on?
Well, and I think that's the underlying message. It's tough to talk about IT today and not have the word security come up in a conversation. So to see security become a hardware requirement to be compatible with Windows 11 is a new direction for Microsoft, but it does show how important security is to them as a company.
Well, and I think especially the past year, I mean, the breaches this past year have been really rough on a lot of fronts, and Microsoft has definitely been, aware of those and been the focus of some of them. And so I think this is a smart move. I think it really does make sense, but it is going to be a little bit contentious, just the rollout. They're going to leave a lot of people on
Well,
Windows
I think the
10.
takeaway is that if you have a computer that's within the last 3 to 4 years, you should have no issues upgrading to Windows 11. But if you have an older computer, then you may have to really see if you're compatible for that security. And what do you think? Future? Is this a fad with Windows 11 or the future?
Well, I really think, and again, past year, this is just going to get more and more accelerated. The cat and mouse game of security and security measures has just gone hyperspeed. and it just keeps getting faster and faster. So I am sure that this requirement of hardware and security compatibilities on the basis level of your equipment is going to be more and more stringent as things go.
And I think there's a little bit of takeaway from the Intel issue with Meltdown many years ago, where a hardware flaw, triggered a whole chain reaction in the industry, potential vulnerability. So tying the hardware and the operating system closer on security is going to be a win for the consumer at the end of the day. Right. And I think this is definitely the future.
Well, and it's also going to push businesses too, right? I mean, because now there's a clear line, a clear number, if you will, of how secure your environment is.
Right.
So,
yep. Okay, great. Well, let's move into topic 3, and this is on the user interface itself. A lot of people resisted that change from previous versions of Windows 7 to Windows 10, where the start menu changed and things were happening in the user interface, which is really one of the toughest things for people because I'm used to where stuff is and it moves around. But let's talk about fat or future on this one.
People don't like change.
People do not like change.
So this will be really interesting, I think. The UI is changing fundamentally on a number of different levels. And one of the most interesting things is because a lot of the facts is that a lot of the interface and functions that they got for Windows 11 came from a side project, not a side project if you will, but Windows 10X, which was purportedly being built for mobile or dual screen devices.
Right.
And they kind of, as they evolved it, they realized that wasn't going to work, and so they turned that into it. They took a lot of those core features into Windows 11. So we're seeing high touchscreen compatibility, flexibility on moving windows around and snapping to areas. We're seeing centralized start menus and centralized taskbars. So all of these things again are speaking very much to a new kind of focus that Microsoft is having.
Well, and there's some negatives, right? So you can't move your start menu. It is down in the bottom centered, and that's where it's going to stay. The touch screen is something that's part of the interface altogether. It's not an optional thing. And this kind of docking setup, again, while it is flexible, it's there whether you like it or not.
Right, and the start menu too, especially, is a lot of change because it now has apps and recent files and documents, and that's it. You don't have a set list of programs, you don't have other tiles, you don't have a list of settings and operations and stuff. It is solely those two things. It's very much like a mobile device UI.
So I think for our fat or future, really the question that we want to put on the table is, do we believe that Microsoft forcing a UI change is the way this is going to go, or do we think that they're going to fall back? Because this has happened before. We've seen it where Microsoft falls back on user interface changes because of basically the feedback from the community.
Windows 8, we don't talk about Windows 8.
Not Windows 8. That's a whole separate thing. But yeah, so is this kind of a fad? Microsoft has come out early saying, hey, we're going to make these user interface changes, deal with it, and then they're going to measure that kind of feedback and say, okay, maybe we'll back off some of these changes.
See, I would have said it was a fad. I would have said this is Microsoft just testing the waters if it had been, I joke about it, but if it had been like back in the Windows 8 era. But it is a different world right now. People are infinitely more comfortable with their mobile devices, with their mobile format. And a lot of these UI changes are really widely recognized as more adherence to the standards of the rest of the world, your mobile devices, your Androids, your iOSs. And so Microsoft moving to that, I feel like there's going to be a lot less resistance, and thus Microsoft's going to be more strong about it, simply because people are just more used to what they're presenting.
Have you met the average business computer user, though?
Absolutely fair point. Those that still buy the flip phones.
So maybe through group policy, we're going to be able to push out the old interface as an option in the registry or something like that.
Well, and again, right? This is how are they going to handle the business side of it? They've talked about the commercial, the consumer side of it.
Right.
How are they going to give the business? If they say, well, yeah, you make 5 changes inside of your domain, inside of your group policy, and it's very business-like, okay, that lessens a lot of the pushback, and they can keep doing the changes that they want to do.
Well, I'm going to have to go fat on this. I think that, again, Microsoft wants to be like everybody else, but at the same time, they have this challenge accepting that they're not like everybody else. And instead of embracing, that they are something unique, it just feels like we're falling into the pack here. And they're coming up with something that really is not, I don't know, I don't feel like it's overly innovative. I agree with, like you said, it's coming in line with what the rest of the industry is doing. when that's not really why we use their operating system. We don't use their operating system because we want it to be like everything else. We use it for our business, our specific purposes, and I don't know. I think this is a problem, and I think Microsoft, hopefully, I want to believe, is going to realize that and make it about, letting me use my applications most effectively, not so much about being like everybody else on a user interface.
But it's really about who is their most important focus, right? It's going to be, are they going to force businesses to adhere to consumer functions?
Right.
Or are they going to be able to let you have choices? Basically?
Well, again, it's a dominating operating system, on PCs for sure, but is it really, truly a dominating consumer operating system at this point in time in the world? And so who should they be making happier? The consumer or the business user.
And 1.3 billion devices. We'll find that out in October when Microsoft, announces further. But I think it's very exciting. It's it's not every day that we get a new operating system, and definitely not one that has as broad of an impact. The question really just, I think, remains to be seen is where is its place in everything?
Yes, and so we are happy to be playing this discussion out for you in the early days of it, and as we wait to see more and find out, what kind of bugs are we going to run into, what kind of compatibility issues, and then what kind of things are going to work great, because there's going to be some great stuff out of it. I mean, wireless displays, probably device connectivity, smarter device recognition. There's so much potential for improvement, and that could really help everybody. So I think we're looking forward to hearing some of that good news. And again, I think overall the news was initially negative, but I feel like it's becoming more positive in what I'm reading online, and I hope that stays that way.
I really do, and I'm definitely going to say it now. The thing that I'm most excited about is Microsoft has always been very open to touchscreens and to kind of changing that paradigm of you sitting at a desktop computer with a keyboard and a mouse and that being the only way you interact with your computer. But a lot of their features were talk to your computer, touch your computer. And those are things that Microsoft has always pushed, but not always in the most intuitive or mass population way. And if they have something that works for businesses, it's going to be really exciting to kind of see the things evolve around those in a way that they just haven't before.
So, okay, great. Well, let's kind of recap then our 3 topics. So our first was fad or future on the forced upgrade idea of the operating system. We both feel that's kind of the future. This
the future.
And this kind of led into our topic 2, where the upgrade has hardware security requirements. Yep. And again, we both kind of agreed to future. So this idea that you need to be current on the operating system and that your hardware needs to support not only the operating system performance requirements, but kind of security standards. This is the way things are going to be. And certainly we encourage our customers to maintain their equipment in a life cycle and retire it or upgrade it when that time is appropriate. And that's one of the reasons we do it, is because we want to keep it on the latest stuff and keep it running securely. So it's good to see that Microsoft is supporting kind of what we tell customers already today.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. That's a
and
very
then
good point.
On the last topic, I'm fad for the UI change. Are you? I wasn't sure.
Oh, sorry. I'm definitely future.
Okay, so we're going to stay split on the last topic. So you think this is the future, and I think Microsoft's going to relent a little bit on these UI changes. So we'll see if I'm right or wrong. But I think forcing everybody into a new UI is going to be bad news for them.
And I'm saying they've learned from their mistakes, especially Windows 8.1, but eternal optimism.
Well, they may not undo the UI, but I bet they back off forcing people to upgrade. So because that would be the next response. If they can't take the UI changes out, they're going to have to do kind of what they did with Windows 7 to 10, is create a prolonged period of upgrade. And I get the feeling right now they want to move people to 11 as fast as possible. And if I were making an argument, I'd probably say they're expecting by the end of next year everybody's on 11.
Well, and so see, that would be really interesting, right? Because they had a no holds bar for the Windows 7 to Windows 10. Basically anybody, please download Windows 10 and install it. But with their stipulations and such, it'll be interesting to see where Microsoft gives in, because I'm sure they do. I'm sure they want everybody to be on Windows 11.
All right, well, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please click subscribe and like below, and we will look forward to seeing you next month for Fad or Future Legal to Vote, episode number 18.
Bye.
Bye.
That off until you snorted, and then it was...
Yeah, at that point, you got to do a cut.
Yep, cut.
That's going to be our other sound effect on a custom button. The snort.
Yes. Aubrey snort.
Give us that on an MP3, will you?
Okay.
All right, let's
Done.
try that again.
3, 2, 1.